Bernardo's and Stop Smoking Services Manchester had the chemical soup idea, and Smoke Free North West were working with the Take 7 Steps Outside Your Home to Smoke, and the two projects work perfectly together. So we're getting the message what's in what chemicals are in a cigarette, and then they're also having the message as well about how far to step away from their home so those chemicals aren't being blown inside, and more importantly children aren't seeing parents smoking as well, and make it a community event where everybody is engaged in some form or fashion, from it being a bus stop conversation to coming to a presentation to hear a brief intervention training, just so we can raise that awareness. We're not telling anybody to do anything, we're just passing on the information for them to have the choice. Young children don't have that choice. Adults do, and they can choose if they smoke and where they smoke. You know, they're dropping the children off at school. If every person that they come in contact with says a little bit about the message about step outside to smoke and not smoke around children, at the end of maybe 10 or 15 counters or meeting with people, they're going to bound to say, this must be something in this message, they must have got it right. I came up with the idea of like looking at the chemicals that are in cigarettes and bring them into a domestic context where people can maybe open the kitchen cupboards and find some of those chemicals. And pretty soon I was sort of made me realise how dangerous the chemicals were, with the warning signs that were on the back of the products, you know, sort of like safety lids to get into them, dangers, skull and crossbone messages. If you put those chemicals together and serve them as a soup, I don't think parents would serve them to children. You arrive at your setting, your room's been booked, you're ready to deliver a chemical soup session. Obviously, you facilitate your room and check what's happening, if there's any fire checks or anything like that. Meet and greet your clients as they arrive, your guests, get them to sign in, so you've got a register and contact details, and then it's really boring, but it's the housekeeping rules, they've got to be done, and you've got to run through about fires, fire safety, fire alarms, housekeeping arrangements, where the toilets are, just basically things like that. Set the scene that they can have a drink if they want to. They don't have to be excused. It's light and it's informal. One of the first ways we start off the session is by going round. You've all sort of come. Some of you know each other, some of you don't. A little nice sort of ways to introduce yourself, explain a little what you do, and also it's a nice way to set the sort of like the benchmark for how the session's going to go. If you take something good that's happening in your life. The training can be delivered on two different levels. It can be delivered by a PowerPoint presentation, and it also can be delivered just very informally on a discussion-based forum. So whichever one suits your style or your community where you're delivering. There's always a scenario where people live in flats and have children, and it might be difficult to get 3 floors downstairs to go out and have a cigarette. We would maybe ask people then to sort of signpost people possibly to have nicotine replacement therapy, so that while they're indoors, they're not smoking around children. There can be other situations where, in relationships, somebody might feel not that confident enough to approach their partner, mother-in-law, visitors about people smoking in their homes. But again, we just have to acknowledge that people will have to approach it at different paces and maybe take on the information bit by bit by bit. And we also ask people to respect the knowledge that some people might have in the room, and also respect for some people it's new information to them. No question is too small. And if I don't know the answer, I will certainly go back and ask somebody and take their contact details to find out the answer to their question. If at any chance I'm chatting too fast, or you don't quite understand what I've said, or it doesn't make sense, just stop and say, Chris, can you repeat that? And I'll go back and I'll cover it again. So that's no worries about that. No question is too small, so don't worry about you thinking, I don't think I should ask that one, because you can guarantee there'll be somebody sat next to you who will want to ask that question too, so make sure you sort of put your hand up and say. And again, it's just like respecting people's confidentiality within the room. One of the other things that we ask at the introductory stage is what are people's expectations from today's session? It might be people think they're going to be turned up to be able to do smoking cessation. Well, that's not. And it might be that we might expect them, they might be thinking they've got to go out and do a campaign here, there and everywhere. But again, it's not. It's just the information can be kept very local, can be just kept to the neighbours, within their family, or spread as far as wide as what they want to. Well, we've gone through the first stage, introduction, setting the scene for the training. Enough of my talking, time to do a quiz. We introduce the quiz where we want to sort of, before we pass on any knowledge, maybe a slight tester, you can say, of how much information people actually know about the chemicals that are in cigarettes. We hand out the quiz, the questionnaire quiz, ask people to work in pairs, if that's okay, again, because that's a little bit more empowering rather than feeling, oh, God, I won't know the answers to this and everybody else is going to know the answers and I'm going to be the only one. And I reassure people, I didn't know the answers to some of these questions. I'm not from a health background either, so I didn't have any of this knowledge either that I'm passing on to them today. The quiz is be a part of your training pack. It's photocopiable, so you'll be able to photocopy it. As I say, hand out the quiz to the people in the group, provide some pens, clipboards sometimes if you can get hold of them from your centre, just gives them something to lean on. And allow maybe about 5 minutes for people to do the question. I get somebody maybe willing in the audience just to read out the questions of like what chemicals they are. By this time I've sort of opened out chemical soup, I've put the pan, that's the chemical prop, onto the table. Do you think this chemical is in chemical soup? And we start revealing each item one by one and get them to say, well, where does this chemical come from? Where does it do? What is it? Is it a dangerous chemical? And get people to respond, so you're like reinforcing that message and embedding it into their mindset.
I've seen the chemical soup kit before, but I didn't actually realise about the radioactive chemicals in it, and that's the one that's stuck with me this time. And I kind of got this picture of the nuclear bombs and things, and I just can't believe that even if it's a small amount, that is in a cigarette.
I also go through the sort of like, when I was first preparing the original prop, I was made very conscious of the fact that they've got safety locks, some of these products on, so they're hard to get off the tops. They've got warning signs, they've got danger labels. So you're talking serious stuff. By smoking or allowing smoking to happen in your household or car, when exposing children to those chemicals. And there we go. There's the soup, a nice chemical cocktail of all different chemicals in there. Would we want to share that soup with some children? I don't think so. So each product's revealed one by one, and then we sort of say, well, do you think that's enough? Were you surprised that all those chemicals were there? Some people, lots of people are surprised. We start trying doing a bit of a guessing number of how many chemicals they think there might be in cigarettes. Should we go a bit higher? 500. 500, should we go a bit higher?
1,000.
Should we go a bit higher?
500. 2,000.
Higher? Anyone want to go higher? Higher?
Oh, that's
What was the last number there?
8,000.
What was
I said
8,000. Well, there's actually 4,000 listed chemicals.
The amount of chemicals in a cigarette really shocked me. It really did, because I was like, I said 50 and there was like 4,000. I was really shocked about that, so I wasn't expecting that at all.
Also have the other part of the prop as well, where it's a list of chemicals, double-sided, very, very long lists, warning you, giving you all the health warnings. We've just selected a few of the most main players, as in carbon monoxide, tar and nicotine. And just we'll have a little loose discussion around and explain how they affect our bodies. Carbon monoxide, when we sort of want to talk about this, we've just got to say it's a colourless, odourless, poisonous gas. But the good thing is carbon monoxide leaves our body within 24 hours after exposure has ended. And that's really good, because if we step outside to smoke, carbon monoxide is going to be out of our house as quick as 24 hours. Better still, if we quit, it's going to be out of our bodies. Tar is that sticky, horrible substance. It's made up of over 60 chemicals, lots of them known to cause cancer. We absorb it, it gets into our lungs, and then it's absorbed and gets into our bloodstream and is carried all around the body. So it's highly toxic, and it really isn't nice stuff at all. Nicotine is highly addictive, but doesn't really have much health damages, especially the amount that's in cigarettes. It acts as a sort of stimulant, a bit like going to the fairground ride where you go on a big ride, you go on for the big ride, you come off and you want to do it over and over and over again, and that's where you get your nicotine rush, where you want to have a cigarette over and over and over again. That's like matching the addiction. The good thing is, once we start quitting, that addiction is reduced. This is where we sort of bring in a lot of the information about adults can choose whether or not to smoke in this country. They can choose if to smoke and where to smoke. But as for children, they can't choose at all. They're waiting for adults to protect them. And especially the under 5, they're always in contact with the parents. So if parents are smoking, that child's going to be smoking too. The statistics are available in the pack about how many children smoke, how many children in Britain are exposed to second-hand smoke, the admissions into hospital through second-hand smoke, and also we sort of go on to the subject about absenteeism and how it affects nursery attendance and school attendance too, and the different illnesses that children will be affected by second-hand smoke, how they'll likely have more increase of asthma and chest infections, bronchial infections, how there's more chance of them getting glue ear, and that isn't treated correctly can lead to permanent deafness, all through just being exposed to second-hand smoke. But you just talk about your pipes really, they're all sort of connected, so if some of that toxins are going into, you're absorbing some of those toxins, it's not going to take long till they all get blocked and gunged up. And so we try to imagine, or try to get the group to imagine what it is like for a child who has glue ear and isn't hearing very clearly, is for them to put their fingers in their ear and try and listen to the conversations that's going around from it. It becomes very difficult. And how we connect that into them when they go to a nursery, if that's happening, they're not hearing very clearly, they're not learning the basic language, which helps them to move on and develop within their school framework. That will move on again into primary school, they'll start falling behind, they'll miss sections, and they'll be forever playing catch-up, added to the fact that because they might have asthma or they might have other illnesses, they might be missing time off school. That all leads to a spiral then once they get to sort of the teenage years and they've fallen behind. It's difficult, it's virtually impossible for them to catch up. And we sort of like almost sort of setting people up to this cycle of poverty and compounding it to keep going on and on and on and on. Always raise the fact that there's no getting away from the fact if a mum's smoking, her baby's smoking too. Or if anybody else is smoking around that pregnant lady, that's causing the baby to smoke too. And that baby won't be getting the full amount of oxygen. They'll be deprived for those periods where, mum's having a cigarette or they're exposed to second-hand smoke. They're not going to be getting their full oxygen to grow and develop. And also you're leading the opportunities or chance or more prone to have cot deaths and lots of serious illnesses and things like that. So really, it's really important that pregnant mums don't smoke and don't expose themselves to second-hand smoke.
What I've learnt the most about this session is about second-hand smoke. I've always known that was bad as well, but I think this course has just helped me realise that it's probably just as bad as smoking yourself and the impact it can have on young children. And I work with children with under 5 years old, and I think I'm going to be much more aware of that now.
All throughout you'll be asking and prompting for questions, and you certainly will get lots of discussion raised within the session, and people have their stories to tell, and you'll be able to share some of your experience as well. And at this point we just sort of like wrap things up about what people might take away from the session, and maybe one thing that they might take away and put into action from coming on the training, and how they might spread the word about chemical soup and step outside to smoke. The main message we want to get over to people is to encourage people to step outside to smoke, take them 7 steps away from the doorway, so it's not smoking in the doorway or out through the window. It's taking that cigarette habit and taking it right outside. Encourage people to make their homes and cars smoke-free, and asking visitors and carers to step outside to smoke and not smoke inside their homes or vehicles. They can have a conversation with their neighbour, they can have a conversation with any relatives, friends, family, see if anybody in their school's interested. They can just pass on the message wherever they meet people. Have they heard about chemical soup, and do they know the dangers of the poisonous chemicals that are in cigarettes? So we sort of do a paper evaluation that's included in your kit, and again it's about measuring sort of how you value the training session, whether or not you've gained some knowledge from it, and also on a sort of short and medium term level, what things they might plan into to help spread the word about chemical soup and step outside to smoke.
We have the chemical soup already set up at work, and I feel more confident in being able to talk to people, because I do see people who pick up the items, and I think I could feel more confident to approach them to take it that step further, to talk about it more.
It's a simple message, a really simple message, very not complicated at all, pitched at whatever level you want to take and run with it. A simple conversation at a bus stop, to a training session, a whole team training session. It's visual, it needs very little engagement. The visual image says 1,000 words. People stop in the tracks and say, oh my God, I didn't know those chemicals were in cigarettes. It's a conversation starter, and it's taking that information to smokers and non-smokers. I think a lot of the information is directed at smokers, but sometimes the non-smoker doesn't realise how much they're exposed to the dangers of toxins that are in cigarettes, and how they might not smoke in their family, but they allow smoking when they go and visit, say, Nana, for instance, or auntie or uncle or friends. So they're allowing their child to be exposed to those chemicals, thinking that, you know, it's all right, 'cause it's only occasion, it's only now and then. Whereas, like I say, there's no safe cigarette, there's no safe exposure to tobacco smoke. All cigarettes should be taken outside to smoke. Just as we've got smoke-free in public buildings, we'll have smoke-free homes and smoke-free cars, and children won't be exposed to that, and we'll have a smoke-free future, and that will lead to smoke-free communities. And a lot of the harmful effects of tobacco smoke will be reduced or completely disappeared. That would be the ideal dream.